Junior Volleyball Association presents Sideline Strategy, a volleyball podcast. Today's episode features business partners and longtime friends, Kevin Pratte and Todd Hollenbeck. Kevin Pratte is currently a public school PE teacher and Rotary member in San Diego. 3 years ago, his family and he founded the Kevin Pratte Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit that awards scholarships to high school boys volleyball players to pay for their club dues. Along with the foundation, Kevin serves as a college recruiting coordinator, helping boys volleyball players secure spots on college rosters. And Todd Hollenbeck is a coach and recruiting coordinator for KP's crew, helping shape the positive impact of the Kevin Pratte Foundation. Todd is also a former men's collegiate head coach and women's collegiate head coach and administrator. Today, we're going to discuss the rapid growth of boys volleyball, the factors that are playing a direct role in the growth of the sport, and how Kevin and Todd are increasing accessibility of boys volleyball across the country. Kevin and Todd, thanks for joining me today. Collectively, you have over 50 years of experience coaching boys, girls, and college volleyball. You're both super passionate about opening more doors for boys to experience volleyball in a competitive setting, with the goal to ultimately play at the collegiate level. So I am curious, and I'm sure our listeners are curious, what your backgrounds are in volleyball. So can you start off, Kevin, by sharing what your experience is like getting started in the sport and playing?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks so much for having Todd and I on. It's always fun to be partnering up with your best friend, Todd, and we're going to do some great work in this wonderful sport of volleyball. Can't thank JVA enough. They've been with me on a lot of camps and had a lot of conversations and Zooms with them. So thanks for giving us this platform. I remember it like it was yesterday, a kid from Hemet, which is Inland Empire, a little different from the coast, but I was at a Carlsbad beach with a lot of family friends and just like watching beach volleyball and a little bit hesitant to ask at third grade if I can go in and play. And I'll never forget Brenda Smith pulling me aside and said, never be afraid to ask to play volleyball. And that stuck with me till, today. And I started playing and, Hemet is not the West Coast. And Todd knows that being from Palos Verdes. And so I kind of had to be gritty and find ways to get on the floor and find opportunities. And sanctioning the sport is near and dear to my heart because in the Inland Empire, when I was growing up in the early 2000s, when I was like in high school, that's when they were sanctioning the sport. So I can relate to Tennessee. I can relate to New Mexico. I can relate to Minnesota and these wonderful states that are starting it. So, volleyball is the ultimate team sport. I've made incredible connections along my journey. I've met some incredible people. And every time I go to a city, my first thing is, where's my volleyball connections? Who can I go have lunch with? And two, where's the best game professionally sport-wise or, college-wise that I can go check out? So volleyball has been everything to me. It's in my blood, and I love helping grow the sport.
That's awesome. Cool. Todd, what about you?
Yeah, awesome question. I mean, it's like being a superhero, it's your kind of your origin story, and I want to thank obviously the JVA for having us on here. Super appreciative. I played basketball, I was tall, skinny, so I played basketball. And then a friend of mine in eighth grade, we played on this little eighth grade team in PE, the Disrespected Mules. That was the name of our team. And at the eighth grade, I loved our school because they actually, if you were the best in your class, they had one lunch period at the end of the volleyball segment that they got all the best teams together and played a little mini tournament to see who the best team was. And we won the whole little mini tournament on the blacktop, underhand serving, everyone rotating, doing the whole thing. And after that, my buddy's like, hey, you should come try out for the volleyball team. He played in seventh grade. I played in eighth grade. I just was in eighth grade. And so I joined the team. I was the only guy on the bench out of 7 players, but I made the A team. And, that summer from eighth grade to my freshman year was just transformational as far as falling in love with the sport, like going down to they're like, hey, we're having beach workouts to try to make the team. And we're like, oh no, we've got to go to the beach with the women's team. That sounds horrible. Or like other, like other sports are like, hey, we've got 5:30 a.m. workouts for water polo. And I was like, no, thanks. Like, and stuff like that. And it just, and I'll never forget, my mom put it in, I think, perfect words. Like, she never had to ask me to go to practice. She was never like, hey, you've got practice tomorrow. It was like, I was like, Mom, we got to go, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna be late. I want to get there early. I'm there, I'm setting up nets. I'm just getting touches before people show up. And I was just hooked from then on out. And through, I got the chance to play for some unbelievable coaches. It's so funny. The coaching lineup I have for my from being a youth to college is pretty unbelievable, where I've got to work with John Spraw, who's the ex-head coach of the U.S. national team, Scott Davenport, who's the head coach of our beach volleyball development, Stein Metzger, who's now the head coach at Beach at Texas, Bill Ferguson, who's the head coach at USC. I've had all these crazy opportunities, and I think that also shaped, me as a coach, of watching. There's such a wide variety of coaching styles and stuff. And it was really cool to see that and be like, hey, not everyone's just the same. Not everyone's just this. You can be your own style of coach and also find success. So I think that's what impacted me as a player. And then when I got a chance to get into coaching, I was all in, because I had all this experience with all these people. So that's kind of how I really got into the sport. And then, got into college, and my junior year, Kevin Pratte came in as a freshman, and that was, one thing I'd say, like, I agree with him, is like, we're definitely kind of culture guys, me and Kevin. I wasn't really a starter. I got some time, I think Kevin ended up having the most starting time out of both of us. But, just like culture guys tend to kind of come together, because, like, I think Kevin was by far, the most enthusiastic, almost overly enthusiastic about the sport and everything. But it's it's infectious. It's
Yeah.
one of those things. And I think for me, it was more like, I'm just always a fierce competitor, which I think some guys that are just very talented, like, need someone that's going to, like, help push them if they're not that competitive. Because, like, just because you're athletic doesn't mean you're going to be a winner, right? You gotta really work on it. And that's something I thought I brought to the table. And Kevin's, hey, positive attitude, next, like, all that stuff. So I thought that's kind of what we brought to our team at Pacific. RIP, RIP program, currently not there, but yeah, that was my origin story. And it was, I grew up in Palos Verdes, but it's so funny compared to some of these other regions like Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach. We were on a little bit of an island. Some people played, some people different. How the years of talent were very much up and down compared to every year Miracosta had a good team. Every year, some of these schools down there always had good players, where, we lost kids to other sports or this, that, and the other, just like a lot of schools. And right now, I work in Santa Cruz County, and we lose kids to tons of, and I coach club here, but, like, I know high school coaches that, hey, we're right by the beach, but it's like, if the surf's good, kids might miss practice to go surfing. Like, we still, even as a California region that's on the coast, we still have some issues with, like, maintaining and building boys volleyball. But, like, those other regions are just, like, constantly stacking and having, good players and stuff like that.
Yeah. So real quick, like, you were a junior, Kevin was a freshman, but, like, he didn't take your spot, right?
No, he was an outside and I was the middle. He did
Okay.
not.
And here we
I
are.
don't
We're
think
still
he,
friends.
we're still friends.
Yeah. Oh, what a cool
Yeah.
story, you guys. Well, Todd, you kind of alluded to, like, I mean, just boys and the participation. So let's get into that. We've seen such a surge in boys volleyball participation. I don't think a lot of people realize, like, over the past decade, boys volleyball participation is higher than other sports. So 76% increase in boys playing volleyball in our country far outpacing other sports at 16%. Like that's a huge difference. The next highest boys sport grew to 16%, 76, 16. So, Kevin, can you share your perspective on this trend and what factors have driven the significant growth in boys volleyball?
Yeah, I've been to 17 states in the last 2.5 months, and I'm going to be at 20 states in another 2 weeks. And like I said, every time I go to a state, I go, what college coach can I connect with? Which JVA director can I connect with? Or a student athlete or someone in the volleyball world that's all about growing boys and men's volleyball.
Mhm.
And, you know, not to get all political, obviously, but I would say that one would argue our country's very divided right now. I would argue our volleyball community is, way more similar than different. If I go to Tennessee and New Mexico, I think they're dealing with the same struggles volleyball wise, and they're all rowing in the right direction. And it's a beautiful country, and it's a wonderful place. And there's people in this volleyball world that just want to get it done. And my hat's off to the First Point Foundation that now USA is involved with that. I know places like AVCA, I know JVA, like the Kevin Pratte Foundation. There are organizations that are trying to row in the right direction to get this done. And I would encourage anyone listening, maybe from an Oklahoma or Texas or Maine or, states that might not have boys volleyball, there is a blueprint and there is a committee at First Point that if you contact Sarah or Kenny, and all you'd have to do is contact someone like Todd and I, and we can get you in touch with those people. And, I'm just so proud of the states of like Nebraska and Tennessee, because on the outside looking in, I'm like, there's just no way. Like that is a football driven community, and it's not going to go that direction. And places like North Carolina and Tennessee are. So it has been an absolute joy. When I used to go on these recruiting panels and listen to college coaches, when I'd ask them questions when I was 18, 17, 16, the question would be, are they going to start more men's volleyball programs? Are they going to start volleyball here? And I get it, but the coaches would just kind of laugh and just be like, no, Title IX, it is what it is. And they weren't not being ambassadors for the sport. They were just speaking truth back in 2005, 2003. I can't believe what John Spraw, Wade Gerard, Brad at AVCA, Lisa, you guys at JVA, Sarah and Kenny, I mean, they're doing incredible work. And we just passed Oregon the other day.
Yeah.
So it's been super fun. And what's really cool, the volleyball community, because I'll be the first to admit, I wish I could write people $10,000 checks and all these things, but you don't need to do that to get involved in the game and grow the game. You can be an ambassador. You can be a cheerleader. You can create camps. You can do things like Todd and I are doing. So very proud of the work we're doing. I think we should pat ourselves on the back, but we have a lot more work to go, and we have a lot more convincing, and we have a lot more lives to impact in the future.
Yeah. So, Todd, you coach men's collegiate volleyball for how many years? 15?
17.
17. Yeah. So you witnessed the growth at that level. Also, there's been some programs that have gotten cut, unfortunately, but with new programs forming every year, it's sustainable, it's still going, and it's strong. So how do you feel the current state of men's volleyball is, and how many can you
Yeah,
educate us a little bit about how many programs are out there?
for sure. Yeah, I think one thing that to combine your last question with KP and this one is why we keep trending upwards and keep adding more programs and more kids are playing is like just watch the 72 and over men's open championship. And I think that's something that if you could see that's the vibe. That's what people are starting to be like, I'm leaving basketball because I see these guys that are playing, they're like lifetime friends. That like I know guys that are in 60 plus, 70 plus that are getting together every week and still playing together in big groups, like 20 guys getting together and playing, right? And I think that's what makes volleyball so special compared to some other sports like football. It's like, hey, you might throw the ball around or you might watch football on television, but you're rarely playing the sport in its entirety past, your 30s, right?
Right.
Where it's like, volleyball, the first volleyball tournament I ever played in, beach volleyball tournament, when I was 15, the court next to us had the oldest living rated player. He was 82 years old, and he
Oh,
was out there running around with his buddy, a younger 71, that was just, they were playing the game. And it was
yeah.
like, I just looked at that and I was like, I could play as long as I want, as long as my knees will, carry me. Like, you can play. And I think that's just something that not a lot of other sports have, right? Where you
Yeah.
get to play a team game that late with all of your buddies. And I think that's where we're trending forward. Kids are seeing this lifetime and the alumni and like these, like, and I know a lot of these schools do it right. Like, I'll be honest, I think, Long Beach State, just to throw them out there, man, they do a lot for the alumni. You see the events they do and all this stuff. And I've seen it at a lot of these schools. Some of these D3 schools are doing it right, where they're building these great alumni networks, and all of a sudden other schools see that that like strengthens the program. And so
Hmm.
if I'm an AD and I see, like, hey, we're getting donations, but this is a lasting thing. This is not just we're not a flash in the pan sport. We are making contacts in the community. We are getting, our alumni to come back and give to the campus. It just creates this, and that's the vibe of volleyball players.
Yeah.
We want to see that every boys men's volleyball player wants to see their previous team succeed, wants to see the previous school succeed, and wants to get involved in some way or another. Even if it's like donating $5 a month, or if it's just coming and playing in the alumni game, right? Like, I think that's why we're seeing the growth. And I mean, I started in D3 men's volleyball at UC Santa Cruz, go Slugs, and there was 45 Division III teams at the time, which was pretty good, which is still more than D1. Now there's over 130. That's
Wow.
crazy growth, right? Because there's a net, right? There's a court, there's a coach. All you need is a different ball and a different set of jerseys, and you can
Right.
have a team and get,
Right.
obviously get some players, but you can have a team. And I think AD saw that. AD saw a chance at a national title. And this is what they needed to do with minimal investment, because if
Right.
there's enough teams, you don't have to fly everywhere. You can just drive down the road. There's the team. We play, right? And D3 men's volleyball, now it's a way tougher game, I'll admit, than when I was in it, because now you've got over 130 coaches recruiting.
Hmm.
So now it's like, hey, there's no longer just 10 top D3s that are getting some of these top level guys. You're competing with so many other coaches, and so many of these kids, like men's volleyball players, we peak differently, right? Like, so like, it might be this dangly kid that's pretty good, but by the time I'm a sophomore at a D3 that's coaching you right and stuff, you're a monster,
Right.
right? And so now that there's more schools taking those kids are panning out at a different level all over the country. Which, you watch the D3 final, man, everyone's just a little bit shorter than the D1 final, but they're just as athletic. They're running the similar offenses, all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
think people are starting to see, and in like, hey, like, if you've grown up, what did you guys have a team that you watched as a family growing up? Was there a football team or anything like that?
Oh, I'm a Cleveland, so I will be a Browns fan till I die, but
Yeah, yeah, okay.
you
So
know,
you grew up watching the Browns, right? And if you wanted to play football, you probably want to play for the Browns, right? But now
I don't know.
there's so many more volleyball schools that if that local college was in my community and I'm a boys volleyball player, I can
Right.
look to that school and now I'm a fan. And
Right.
now it's like, I want to play there when I grow up,
Yeah.
which is, for some of these D3, is pretty doable, pretty achievable, which just helps drive these kids. And I could be an A1 top level kid that maybe I don't want to play at one of these really big schools. I want a private school education. I can go to this local school that I've always wanted to play at because I got to go to the games when I was 10
Yeah.
or whatever. And I think we're starting to see that happen, where there's a school that has men's volleyball in my community. And that just means more players are going to be interested in maybe going to a game, or their high school coach takes them to a game because it's right down the road. It's not like you have to drive 6 hours or take a flight to your local men's volleyball game.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
access it. And I think that's why we're seeing, 130 D3. We've got like 50-ish D2. Same thing for NAI, about like 55 plus. And then, the only one struggling right now is D1. Just because of the opt-in costs and the money and the compliance costs and all that stuff that just create
it's
a different
world
atmosphere.
right now, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
That's a whole nother podcast. My gosh, that's a whole nother episode. But like you
Really.
brought up a good point with recruiting with boys who then become men, and I mean, my husband was 5'11" at the end of high school. He ended up at 6'3" during college as a setter. So like, yeah, like you gotta I'll tell your parent, you gotta like ask
You
questions.
got
And yeah, there's just a
different
lot
market.
that goes into recruiting. So Kevin, what was your recruiting experience like? Like, can you guys share a little bit about the journey that you all had?
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you may, I just think this is so important just to piggyback real briefly on what Todd eloquently said is I've had the luxury these last couple of weeks going to all these cities and states, and then I jump on to a D3 program and they meet me right after I fly in at 4 a.m. They'll meet me like 5:30 a.m. in their office. These coaches are amazing. I've met them in like Arcadia. I met the Washington and Jefferson, the Chatham coach. It's been amazing. And they introduced me sometimes to their like ADs or presidents, and they love the vibe of volleyball because it's an enrollment driven sport.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about this. Yeah, it does cost money to run a team, but you also have a number of guys coming into these Division III programs and they're paying tuition. So I really encourage these ADs to strongly look at this sport, even at the Division I, Boston College, Santa Clara, Pacific schools like that. We have a sport where we have guys that can afford these types of schools and they just want an opportunity to play. And I agree that could be a whole nother podcast, but I'm always trying to encourage athletic directors to get this thing going. But back to your awesome question. My recruiting journey is very unique and interesting. I won the parent lottery. I was very, very, very lucky. I had a very supportive father and mother, and my dad, every time that I would get woken up in the morning, he would talk strategy in a good way. I loved it. He's like, all right, we got to email Northridge today. This is the angle of approach we're going to use. They played last night. And like, it was a bonding experience for us. It wasn't like an overbearing dad with recruiting. I loved it. And I ate it up. And we needed to do that because Hemet's off the beaten path. We're 2.5 hours inland from the beach, more or less. And so we're not going to get Coach Knight to drive to a Hemet High School boys volleyball match. And I'm not saying he should. So I had to get creative. And one of the ways I got creative is I got ways to go to camps. And I always love this story. I went to the Santa Barbara camp, which is what fired me up about doing the KP volleyball camps. I loved Kenny Preston's model. He would invite all these college coaches. And back then you had to have a recommendation to go to the camp. It doesn't work that way anymore, but back then you did. And I got a recommendation. And then there was some talent there. There was 8 courts that just humming. And like, if you looked down the road, you're like, that guy ended up playing college. That guy played college. And I was pretty gritty. And I had a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset back then. And I was really frustrated that I got on court 2. And I was like, oh man. And so what I did is I just kind of shuffled over to court 1 without any of the coaches knowing. And when they took attendance, I had to run to the restroom or I had to get some water. And I lasted 3 of the 4 days. I got away with it. And buzz around camp was going, what is that Pratte kid doing from Hemet? Like, what's going on? But they, in my defense, they invited everyone from court 1 to a high performance camp. I got invited to that. I got connected with Dan Fisher on that camp, who is now the Pittsburgh coach. Yeah. At the time was the Pacific assistant. I got connected with Jeff Campbell, and they'll never forget that story till this day when they see me. And I'm not telling kids on this podcast to go switch courts and make my life hard at camp with Coach Todd and I, but I was gritty, and I think you need that. And I
Yeah,
think
there's
that,
something to be said about that.
yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
Coach Wortman at Pacific, love that guy to pieces, mentor. I think that's what Coach Fisher saw in me. They took a chance on me, and that's why I love recruiting, because I like coaches to take a flyer on a kid, like give him a shot, and I think I seized it. Um, and I think I did little things too, like I was a big handwritten letter guy. Like if I went on a visit, they got a handwritten letter. I went to every game. I shook the coach's hand, looked them in the eyes. And yeah, there was probably some schools that there wasn't probably that much of a shot, but you know what? No one was going to crush my dream. And I think this is important for listeners to know, and nothing against, there is a full circle story on this, is I sent my VHS tape. That's what we had to do back in the day for you
Yeah.
kids. That's, yeah. So I sent my VHS tape to Pete Hansen at Ohio State. He mailed it back to me and said, well, that Todd's laughing. Yeah, but it's like, and I'm like, but you know what? I took that letter and I put it on my mirror and I looked at it every day for a year and a half. And I was like, I'm going to get this guy. And you know what? Hawaii did something somewhat similar, and I ended up playing Hawaii. And I had my struggles at Pacific, don't get me wrong, but I had a game against Hawaii. I hit like 330, had 27 kills. And I remember Coach Walton coming up to me like, job well done, and like shook my hand. And that was fulfilling. And I think of those kids during the recruiting process. I think you got to have grit. I think I managed to have that, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because I think it helped shape my life. And I think these coaches that took a chance on me embraced that. I'm still in touch with them. And I love my recruiting journey. And I actually find myself getting a lot of clients that are like in my shoes. And then Coach Todd and I work with them and try to place them on a team.
That's so cool. Like you're in it in the moment and you're hearing no's, and then now you're, fast forwarded today and it's shaped who you are. Now you're helping to guide others going through the same thing because you've been through it. And I think that's cool.
It's a great perspective in life. I don't mind being told no.
Yeah.
I'm playing with
Right.
house money. Like anything I go up to, I'm like, well, she might say no, but
What's the
I
worst
do
that could happen? Yeah.
it with great enthusiasm and try to do it articulately. But I don't have a lot of fear on those types of things, believe it or not. Well, 22 of the 20 or 21 of the 22 Division I programs told me no.
Yeah.
Todd, were you sneaking over from court 2 to court 1 as well?
No, I was the court 1 guy, but I think
they're like,
no,
we're putting the tall guy at court 1. Let's go.
and I think I had, I was, fairly tall, had pretty darn good technical skill, was a pretty good player. But like looking back at it, I played, what was his name? So yeah, I when I played club, and we were pretty good. One of the better, a good team in Southern California. I played for SCBC, and we were pretty darn good at time. Had some really good players, but like we beat teams, or I just I'd clean some middle's clock, and end up seeing that middle like at UC Irvine or the national team, because I lacked the just outright physicality, like raw physicality. I was, I needed strength training is what transformed me in college, and I played a little professionally overseas when I got out of college, but it was strength training that had transformed me. I was not a jumper until I started hitting the weight super hard, and that's when I started actually being able to perform at what I'd call a true Division I level. But I didn't I was emailing coaches and filling out questionnaires, but UC Santa Cruz was my number one because it was in California and it was on the beach. But I didn't have the highest GPA in the world, and I didn't get in, and that was a little heartbreaking because it was my number one. And I also think athletically was a good fit for me. But I've been to Pacific, and I've been on some other campuses, And, Coach Wortman definitely took a chance on me because like, they're like, oh, you're going to, well, you play outside. We'll train you up because I just wasn't big enough to play in the middle. And they have these big physical middles. And so it's like, okay. And so they took me and they put me at the outside with literally no training as an outside. So besides beach, I played a lot of beach. So I kind of got the hang of some of it. But, I was pretty low man on the totem pole when I first came in. And, when you're on the roster of like 20 guys and you're number 19, 18, you're not getting a bunch of time with the coach teaching you how to platform pass. Right. Like, so, and I get it because I've run a roster of 21 guys. That's tough to ensure that every guy gets some time with the coach. Tough. And so, I actually, the most interesting part about my recruiting journey is my sophomore year, I got cut. And then I actually, took that entire summer of my sophomore year because I asked my coach, Coach, I understand and respect your decision. Can I try out next year if I come back? And he said, yeah, you can come out and play in the fall. And so I literally just took the whole summer to get bigger, stronger, faster, and work on being terminal. Because at that next level, there's no control is important, but you have to be able to score points. And I didn't have the arm, right? I was a middle that was a mid outside, right? And so I trained the whole summer, worked on being terminal, and then came back and made the team again. And like 3 weeks in, one of our middles went down with an injury, and they just threw me in the middle, and I was doing really well. And they're like, oh, Todd, I'll never forget this guy, Brian Zadro, our opposite, goes, Todd, I just thought you were a horrible outside. That's literally what he said. And I was like, no, I've been a middle this whole time. And just, that's where they put me. And then I made the rest of my career as a middle blocker. Funny enough, after college, I hired a passing coach. And I'll never forget the look on this guy's face when I showed up to this little facility down in El Segundo. And he goes, oh, for you. Because I was an adult and it was for like a youth facility for training. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay. So I had this guy really reteach me how to pass. And then I ended up playing outside overseas.
Wow. Post college, like you're still
Yeah.
learning and training, like the
Yeah.
mindset, like that's really awesome. So we got more to dive into. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned Kevin or Tom, when you guys alluded to Oregon. So they're the 29th state to sanction boys volleyball. Woo! Several states sanctioned the sport the last couple of years. So we're snowballing here, right? So 1 in 4 Oregon schools had a team last year, high schools, and that added up to 68 teams. So now that it's sanctioned, like what does that mean for the boys in that area and the clubs in Oregon? Like what is it going to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I fortunately had the luxury of meeting Coach Patrick, who was huge on this, getting this going. And Coach Jay, I met him at the First Point tournament in Austin. It was a fabulous boys volleyball tournament. That's a whole nother story. But I met Coach Patrick. We connected. He actually got on my podcast about 2 weeks ago. We posted that, and it was just educating the Oregon community about how important this was. And I'm not going to lie to you. I thought it was a slam dunk. I was like, yawn, this one's done. It's in the bank. It went 27-15. And Patrick was like, no, it was a lot of discussion. And that's why I just think it's so important to do these platforms. Let people know, like, wait, it doesn't cost as much as you think. This is the numbers. This is the growth. This is the impact it can make on lives. This is the average GPA of a boys' high school team, so, and the philanthropy that boys and men's volleyball does. I mean, and again, I'm not knocking other sports. Like they probably have their success stories too, but there's so many in boys volleyball. But why it impacts Oregon is it's going to give opportunities for kids to play for free. And as a public school educator, I have a soft spot in my heart, and I actually work at one currently right now. Is I'm a big fan of Title I schools, and Title I schools, as you guys know, that's when the average income at the school is under poverty. And to me, that's what it's all about. Like, yeah, we can get really wealthy kids playing volleyball, and as we should, and they deserve an opportunity. And I've worked with those types of students too. but every kid should have an opportunity to do what Todd and I got to do. And because they passed this in Oregon, I was talking to Coach Patrick. He's like, oh, yeah, we have a ton of Title I schools that are going to be involved in this. And I was like, that is incredible. And so I think that they're going to have free busing to the games, which is huge. I mean, you do club, it's scary as an AD or coach. It's like, all right, boys, hop in the car and just go. I mean, when you have a bus driver, it's cleaner, it's more efficient, and it's safer. Yeah. I also think they're going to be able to pay the refs. The refs do so much. And at these club levels, I know because I talk to them on my journeys out and about, they do it for free. And don't get me wrong, volunteering is great. Todd and I do a lot of it. You do a lot of it. But it can get tiring at times. And at the end of the day, you do need to take care of yourself and pay the bills. So we're going to get to pay those refs in Oregon. Mm-hmm. Also, coaches out there, we all know that you don't do it for the money, and we respect coaches like crazy, but that stipend does make a difference. And, you know, although it might not be a lot, but it's just a little cushion for that coach that says, hey, this will help pay for your rent or pay for your gas or stuff. And that stuff's important. So I hope it motivates other states like Oklahoma, Idaho, Washington, and
Georgia.
Yeah.
Boys are growing.
Getting there. I think
it's a football state, like you had mentioned with Tennessee. I mean, it's a football state, but it'll get there.
But I'm proud of Oregon, and you know, I have deep ties in Oregon. That's where my parents met, and hopefully Coach Todd and I will be doing a camp there down the road. But really proud of Oregon, and I would encourage any state or state leader that, you know, volleyball, like in Alabama, like they're trying to get it going, they're doing good work. Talk to First Point. Talk to people like JVA. Talk to AVCA. Talk to Todd, myself. There's people out there that want to help.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, also just getting in a club like boys volleyball growing, the demand for club will grow. You know, club volleyball costs a decent amount of money, playing in, you know, some showcases, and, you know, there's so much that the costs are kind of high. So through your leadership in the Kevin Pratte Foundation, you have both been very passionate about making volleyball more accessible to boys across the country. You offer scholarships for camps and clinics. So these past 2 months, you visited over 17 states, 2 months, and run over 6 boys volleyball camps with multiple college coaches. So can you talk through what that looks like, your mission? I mean, that is so awesome, and you are staying so busy.
Yeah, well, first I'm really lucky to have an extremely supportive girlfriend that is a huge cheerleader that's like, go Kevin, go, you know, because I've been gone the last 7 straight weekends, and this is my first weekend home in San Diego, which you'd be like, why would he ever leave San Diego? You know, because San Diego's the best. But I have a very supportive girlfriend. Thank you, Sheena. But, you know, to get back to the foundation is I just think I'm in a time in a place in my life where I can pay it forward. I've had incredible mentors like my high school coach, Dan Quam, my college coach, Joe Wortman, Dan Fisher, who's doing great things at Pittsburgh, some incredible Tiger mentors like Chris Thomas. Jeff Hall was my coach, who's now taking over the Northridge Beach and was at Beach at Hawaii. They've all been around me. And then also like people like Coach Cook, I got to work for him. Gary Sato's been amazing. I mean, the list goes on and on. Yeah. But I want to pay it forward. And I thought, what better way? Because my parents, like I said, I won the parent lottery. I'm still very close to them. They live only, 15 minutes from me, and they love volleyball. And they always, when I go on these journeys, did you run into Gary? Did you run into Coach Knight? Oh, how are they doing? And we're always sending pictures of us at the beach to these coaches saying, the Pratt say hi, we're your biggest fans. So, I really would like to think that the foundation is driven through relationship building. We like to invest in our student athletes. And yes, they do get a little stipend and they help pay for club, but I think the real treat is they get to join KP's crew. They get to join the Pratt family, and we're really passionate about it and just love doing it. And we have so many success stories. We have kids that are at historically Black colleges. We have kids at Ohio State. We have a number of kids that have end up playing college volleyball because we end up, and Todd's getting on board now too, which is amazing. We help those students that we scholarship free of charge, and we help them get recruited. And we have, an ability to do that. So it's a passion project. I think I encourage all leaders out there. It's okay to make an honest buck, but it's also okay to pay it forward and find some time. And we're so fortunate that JVA embraced our mission and has partnered up with us, because we get to go into states that I call the incubator of volleyball. Like, it's new there. And Todd can attest to this. When we were in New Mexico, and people like JVA are being very supportive. And really, I truly believe we're making a huge impact in lives.
Yeah, we're super proud to support your mission and the foundation. And like, you're like changing lives. I mean, the recruiting process is stressful as it is, and helping these boys find a home for their future academically and athletically. That's like a dream. So congrats. That's so awesome what you all are doing. Talk a little bit more about, how many scholarships you've given out, what's up next for the foundation. Like, let's brag a little bit here.
Yeah, well, thanks for this platform. And, we have given 14 scholarships in the last 3 years. And to be brutally honest, we're pretty selective, and it's really fun. Actually, we treat it like the Heisman Trophy. So if you win a scholarship, you're on that Zoom reading these essays with some Pacific Tiger alum and my parents, and we're going through the weeds and we're looking through these essays. And to apply for the Kevin Pratte Foundation scholarship, it takes place in August. So we average about 125 applications. And we have to go through it. And so I found, like, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's a good life skill. We're picky. Like, it's like, hey, you gotta get your transcript in, you gotta get your essay in, you gotta get us film. And if you mess up on one of those, no hard feelings, but we have 125 of these to read through. I would encourage anyone listening that could have the means to help and provide to this worthy cause. It will be used to great services. We either will get kids to camp at cost-effective rates that JVA has been very helpful with, which we talked about, or they will also be one of these scholarship recipients. So we try to get about 3 to 6 out a year, and we try to choose them, wisely. But you never know when you go on this journey. Like, I called Todd the other day, and I'm sure he'll like to chime in because I think he's got some really good ideas that I want him to share about the foundation. But I go, hey, Todd, I got this call from Houston. They want to give us Letterman's jackets, KP's crew Letterman's jackets. He's like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I called the guy. I said, with all due respect, like, how did you hear about me? I didn't reach you. He's like, love your mission. Love what you're doing. Love your passion. We want you wearing our brand. We want to be part of your brand. I'm like, heck yeah. So that's on the horizon. We've got some really cool things going on. So just very proud to be part of the organization. But I think it'd be cool for Todd to chime in on what could, happen in the foundation moving forward.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the foundation is truly kind of always brings us back to our center of why we do what we do. Because we do, I love doing the recruiting stuff in the camps. College recruiting is my favorite thing. When I was a head coach, recruiting was my number one favorite thing to do. And then running camps is always just this, the camp energy is always fun, right? So the fact that I get to choose two of my favorite things is amazing. But it always comes back to the foundation and why we do these things. And this is, something that was, when I first got involved before we went NCAA, when we were NAIA, I was about to become a member, and then we went to Division II, and then NCAA rules is a little mucky, so we didn't, we didn't do it. But I've been involved this whole time as far as voting and reading resumes, and I mean the civic leadership piece is by far my favorite part, because there's a lot of good volleyball players out there that need help. but it's those kids that are doing those extras. They're volunteering at food lines, that are working for like Second Harvest, doing different projects and doing that stuff. And those kids are not only making a difference in the volleyball world, but making a difference in those communities. Like that stuff, just, those are the kids that are getting the scholarship money, and as far as how we get more scholarships out to more kids is more partnerships, right? So we're definitely, if the people out there are listening to this and they want to get involved and they want to donate, man, your money goes so far, because some of these clubs that these kids can't afford, it's not that expensive if you're looking long term. So your donation makes a giant impact right away. And you'll see your kid, the kid that you donated that scholarship for, you see that kid's name, you get to follow that kid, hey, through his college career. Watch him grow, watch him become an All-American, watch him play professional, watch him, who knows, maybe someday we'll get a kid that makes the national team. But, they'll get that opportunity because you help make their donation. Hey, you're paying $5 a month. These kids, that any drop in the bucket, and for us right now, it's about how can we get more scholarships out, because we've got lots of great people making donations. But we always could use, we need more. Like if we want to give out more scholarships as the sport keeps growing, we need, an abundance of donors to help get more scholarships out to more kids.
And then another thing to add, if you may, is I think it's so important to mention on this platform how great JVA's been. We contacted them, and what's been really cool is they identified the camps that we're doing. And the partnership we have with them is we work with directors or region leaders, and we really cut the price down. So for example, we had 45 kids at this last New Mexico camp. And you might think, 45 kids at a camp, that's not that much. This is New Mexico, and New Mexico is a great state and there's great people, but this is a state that doesn't have sanctioned high school volleyball. Or like in Tennessee, we had about 50 kids. And what's so important in how JVA helped us with New Mexico is it allowed us to reach out to some Title I schools. It allowed us to make those camps cost effective, because the number one thing I hear is, it's just so much just for one weekend. But when you get someone like JVA involved, we can reduce the price because they're partnering with us. And that's incredible. And I think it fits your mission. It fits our mission. And then another thing to add too is, I think it's great to have a $10,000 booster, and I would never ignore that. And that's incredible. But gosh, it's the daily $5, $10 a month, and it can add up. And I think your money will be well spent with passionate leaders that want to grow the game. And another thing, just like lastly, in the spirit of growth of the game, every time I call a club director and say, hey, your student athlete won this scholarship, they're very excited. They blast it all over their social media on their club, and that's amazing. And I always challenge the club director, and many say, you know what, you're right. I say, we'd like you to pay it forward. We'll pay for this month of their club fee. Why don't you pay for the second month? And usually the club director says yes. So there are generous people out there. Find us and let's keep growing this sport.
Yes, let's go. All right. So Kevin, let's talk about the synergy you have. Like middlehitter.com, we have not even tapped into that, but everybody knows that's the website for men's volleyball. The KP Foundation, KP Here podcast. You have your own podcast, which is really, really good if anybody hasn't listened yet. And college volleyball recruiting, like you're involved in all these things. So how do you tie them all together? Like how do you, first of all, do it all and your full-time job, but how do you tie it all together?
Well, KP stands for keeping positive, and all those things have positive energy. And I live life with great enthusiasm. So all those things that you mentioned, like passion and enthusiasm, right? And again, lucky how I was raised, lucky the mentor, like my parents, lucky about my mentors, very supportive, like I said, girlfriend that's like, okay, here he goes,
It's
and
another
so
shout out.
she's the best. I mean,
You're
Todd's
gonna love
better.
that.
she's the best. And because I just go. And they're all passionate projects. But you know what I'll say too? The one thing about the education system is I've been doing PE for a while. What a great profession. I get to go, like, after this, I'll close this computer and I'm just going to pour into some kids. And then, like, volleyball's kind of off for 5 hours, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to pour into these kids. But then the beauty of that profession, I'm not grading a lot of papers. I'm not grading things. It's like, when I'm done, I'm done. Then it's back to, like, all right, Todd, what do we got to do? What do we got to do for the foundation? And so, like, middle hitter, I know you guys are JVA is in Illinois. Jerry's the one who gave me middle hitter. I was listening to a podcast, Rob at the Mic, shout out, great podcast for college volleyball. And I heard Dan Friend, who's amazing human being, and Jay and Brad at UC San Diego. Brad's great. They volunteer at my school all the time, UC San Diego. They're incredible and work with my kids. And then Theo. And I heard them talk about middle hitter and that Jerry's going to, I guess, let it go. Like, no director of volleyball operations or no compliance or university wants to pick it up. I called Dan Friend in 2 seconds. I said, and I didn't even run it by Sheena or anything. I said, I need that website, and then Jerry and I were on 4 a.m. Zoom calls before my teaching. And what a guy. He'd meet at 6 a.m. and he gave me all the things. And it's still a work in progress, but he's just been an incredible partner. And you know what? He could have said, like, 10 grand here, and I probably would have, like, tried to find a way. But he's not like that. He's one of us, like, he's like, Kevin, just grow the game, do it the right way. And in that website, I'm trying to make it proud. We've talked about the foundation. Yeah, the KP podcast, I think, is here. Podcast is great. Get to interview mentors, interview college coaches. And really, my favorite thing is when a family goes, tell me about the USC program or the Loyola program or UCLA. I just give them the link to that and say, hey, this is the coach's perspective. So I think it gets a lot of wins in a lot of different lanes with our recruiting process, what we're doing. And then, the college volleyball recruiting, we kind of mentioned that too. Like, yeah, Todd and I run a business, and it's very fun. And, we are passionate about college recruiting, and that's one of my favorite pieces about launching a young man and helping him launch onto a team and having that transition from going to home to college and being a little bit a piece of that. But our guys have been doing it for a while now. I've seen some of my clients get married and been invited to their weddings. It's been just incredible. And to tie it back and bring it all back, it all comes with keeping positive and passion and enthusiasm. That's how they all connect. And it's been really fun. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. And I always believe there's always something good around the corner.
Yeah. So, JVA is an association for club directors, the coaches. We want to see these clubs have more boys volleyball, right? We like keep growing it and finding ways to plug into the boys in your area. If that's going to be teams or just co-ed programming or boys clinics, whatever it may be. What advice do you have for clubs who are trying to grow opportunities for boys volleyball in their area?
Todd, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, we don't want to be too linear with our mindsets. We got to be open to making more connections. I think that's something that we've seen a little bit with clubs that are like, hey, I'm just trying to get my kid, like, I'm just trying to get kids to make the money, to keep the lights on. And I understand that it's part of the business, but it's how can I make if I can make the sport accessible for all, that's going to pay off in the long run, where there's always going to be so many kids trying out. And in the Bay Area, like, so I work in Santa Cruz, very different space than when I was working over the hill for Mountain View Volleyball Club. Like, there were so many kids. Like, we've seen this crazy boom explosion where it's like we were hiring extra coaches because we thought we were going to take two teams at each age group, but there was enough for 4 teams at each age group. And it was like, that's wild. And I think it's like, how can we get creative? How can we help and again, how can I, if I'm a club director and I've got what I need, how can I help a smaller club grow? Because it's going at the end of the day, it's going to be better for the community, right? Instead of, hey, these are my kids and this is my money. It's like there'll be a time for that. Don't worry. But
Yeah.
it's like, how can I continue to grow the game in my, in my area?
Right. Get
And
rid of
I
the
think,
ego, and
yeah, and because the money's going to be on the table. You like, if you lose one kid to another club, that's not that's not your all your money going away.
train the
It's like,
next one. Train
yeah,
the next one.
if you've got good coaching, you've got good ethics, you run a good club, there should be no problem. And I think that's just something we've got to adopt, especially in these regions where there's not a lot of volleyball going on. And there's someone else that wants to start a club. I think that's a good thing. That's not something that should be shunned. I think that's something that I, as a club director, could, hey, I'm going to offer help. And if they don't want the help, that's great. Then they're on their own path. But we need to make sure we keep an open mind and also a welcoming attitude, because that's what makes the game of boys volleyball and men's volleyball so why we're growing,
Yeah.
right? Because
I
the
just
kids,
love the stories that I hear of club directors mentoring other club directors in their area. I mean,
huge. I mean,
it's everywhere.
it,
Just, Houston Juniors, Stephanie. I mean, she's doing it in her area. She has mentored for a very long time, just giving back, right? It's only going to help the sport.
and
Yeah.
help the sport. And at the end of the day, if you're that stand-up person, all that stuff, it's only going to come back to you, right? You're not going to get burned for helping others a bunch, right? You're gonna make good things will happen. And I
Yeah.
think we just, and that's tough to say because I don't have to, I'm not in that space. I'm not sitting there, but at the same time, I've seen it work. I've
Yeah.
seen other coaches help other clubs and see those clubs grow to where now when and especially in we'd have tournaments in the Bay Area where like our first day, it was tough because we're playing teams that like have zero development and all this stuff, and I'm worried about my athletes getting injured rather than, hey, if we're reaching out, we're helping those clubs grow. My kids are only going to get better by playing better players.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just how it's going to be. And so by the time we go to SoCal or go to nationals, we'll be more prepared because we battled against
You don't
more
have to get
prepared
on a
teams.
plane to do it. You just
Yeah, a
drive an
hundred percent.
hour.
You can
Yeah, half
play.
hour.
Yeah, you can play better teams in your region. Is just so much more helpful than,
Hmm.
hey, like having a powerhouse is great, having two powerhouses, but like if there's 20 clubs and only a few powerhouses, that means we're not growing it in the right way, in my opinion. We need to make
Yeah.
sure that we have some real competition because that's only going to make you so much better and make every tournament worth more.
Kevin, what do you got to add to that? That was good,
Yeah.
Todd.
If I was a club director right now and trying to get it going, I would grow from the bottom up. And what I mean like that, it's like if I was a principal, right? I'd run and be like, I'm going to get a really good kindergarten. I'm going to get a really good first grade. And it's going to slowly but surely build. I'd also scan my environment, like who in my area is incredible. So like if I live in San Diego, there's like Wave, Coast, Balboa Bay. Like I'd get on the phone for sure with Travis Turner. Now he's maybe going to get all these phone calls, but in the men's volleyball community, there are people that will sit down. Balboa Bay is one of the best clubs in the country. Like I'd say, what are you doing well? And he'd tell you like, I hire a lot of teachers. And he goes,
Yeah.
I hire teachers because they are certified. They have the education background. I could teach them how to coach. And granted, all his coaches are incredible and coach a lot of collegiately, but their roots tie back to K through 12 education. I would encourage that. Everything Todd said, I thought was great. I also, really, I truly believe this. I'm not just saying this to, get more connections, but I think recruiting is now we're turning in a good way more into women's volleyball where there's more opportunities, which is good. And I think sometimes these families can get pretty overwhelmed. And I think these coaches that are understaffed at the college level can get overwhelmed with all these emails. One thing that I have actually found that Todd and I, which a huge asset is we can get answers pretty quickly from these college coaches. We can text them and they'll write back because we're friends with them. We go and visit them in these cities and we hang out with them. And when they're on the recruiting trail, we're sitting right next to them, like talking to them about their family. And we are deeply connected with them. And
Yeah.
these coaches are honest with us. They'll be like, no, we're not interested in that kid. Or we are. Yeah, let's get him on campus. my point is, if I was a club director, I would look at a way to give back to the community. And also, one of my things as a club director is I want to really be good at launching kids to go to play at college, because that's, a lot of the American dream for our kids. It's like, hey, let's get them to play college volleyball. And that's why parents are getting them involved in this. Like, hey, we'll be an avenue to get to a 4-year school that's really good, or a community college. And college isn't for everyone. Don't get me wrong. If you don't go to college, that's fine. But I know a lot of kids are striving to do that. So if I was a club director, C2 Attack has done it, 630 has done it, TVC is going to do it. Like, they're all partnering with Todd and I. And trust me, like, how the cloth we're cut from. We give back to that club too. We don't just go, oh yeah, give us all your kids, we'll take all the money. Like, no, we have a great partnership with our clubs. And so I would encourage any club, like, this is our expertise. Todd and I have over 50 years of experience at college volleyball and recruiting. Let us help you guys and use our connections to help change and impact lives and get kids to play college volleyball. And on another note, I just think it's important to mention this is, I think it's important to enjoy the journey. It's okay to be quick, but not hurry if you're a young club director. I think it's also true, and I've been trying to say this too when I'm on this path, and all these things has been so good for me to hear. Like, Todd's like, it's not about the money if you're a young club director. It's not about this. And like, it kind of reminds me of my camps. It's like, hey, if we're going to build this camp and build a monster and do it the right way, do it the right way, partner with the right people, go to the right cities, do the camp the right way. And I've really stopped and like tried to smell the roses. Like, I went to Red Rocks, Mumford and Sons. I've been to all these games. I've been enjoying myself on these trips. And I've been golfing with Gary Sato in Colorado. Like, it's been amazing. And I also think it's important to scan your environment. You just got to, if you're a young club director, like, read the room, see when it's time to speak up and advocate, see when it's time to be a leader, see when it's time to take a step back and be quiet, and listen to leaders. And so I think that's important. And then, that all being said, I think the number one thing is stay genuine of who you are. If you're a passionate, positive, keeping positive guy, and you're a guy that likes to drive in fifth gear, then do it. And that's who I am. So I'm an all-in type of guy. So if you're going to deal with KP's crew, you're going to get a guy that's like full force. And I make no apologies about it, because I think it's good, positive energy. But I just can't thank you enough for having me on. I mean, this has been,
thank you both. You guys, this is tremendous. And if those listening, have not checked out the Kevin Pratte Foundation, make sure to do that. And then KP Here podcast and metalhitter.com. What else? Anything else we want
and
to
the teacher in me, I can't let you off. I'm always an educator. I would feel so horrible if you asked all these eloquent questions to me and I didn't ask you one. So I got
question.
to ask you. Okay, one question.
Here we are.
What has been the most fulfilling part of being part of JVA, the great organization you're part of?
Each year has brought a pretty cool, like, new thing. This past year was 100% Aligned Volleyball Summit. And I think it was honestly like the process of when I started with JVA 14 years ago to where we've gotten with our education and our networking and connecting all the club leaders across the country. We found this new event that brings everybody in face to face together to enjoy our sport and what we do for a living or on the side, and inspire everybody to continue to learn and grow and make volleyball their career, right? Running a club and leading junior volleyball athletes can be a career. And I think that that's pretty awesome. People are, recognizing that they can run a club, they can have staff under them, they're growing their programs, boom, they've got a facility, and they're just creating this safe space for kids to enjoy the sport. So Align Volleyball Summit was in May. That's definitely the best part of my job so far, was that event. And doing this kind of stuff. I like getting on and talking to people and learning it each and every day. So I geek out over volleyball just like you guys. Yeah, well, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. And we'll keep keep working together on this journey. It's going to be a fun ride.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thanks. All right. Enjoy your day.
Yep.
See y'all.
Bye.
Yep.